Oh yeah, that was.
Oh, your pictures.
Mine keeps
I
scooching,
don't
doesn't
know
it, for some
why.
reason?
I've got it set to locked. I don't know what's going on. I'm not an expert at this software. All right, we're live. So welcome to the D2 Speedcast, episode 8. This will be our first real life race recap episode. We're going to look back at the 2019 race at Texas Motor Speedway, the DXC Technology 600, because this weekend IndyCar is going back racing.
Thank
They're heading to
goodness.
Texas.
Thank goodness, about time. This is going to be a huge one. So all the virtual racing that we've been doing finally get back going. So yeah, this will be a good chance for us to kind of go back over and revisit what the strategies were. The cars pretty much identical to what they had last year, aerodynamically wise and development wise. Apart from obviously the aero screen.
Yeah, except for the big giant cockpit.
Yeah, one minor change to last year. Yeah.
We'll
So
have to
yeah,
talk about that next week. Actually, we'll have to get everyone's opinion on what the air screen was like at a high. I mean, it's going to be hot in Texas, right?
yeah, and what the vision's like. It's going to be a long day. They're going to be practicing, qualifying, and racing all in one day. I don't know what. Do you know what time the race starts? Last year it went into dusk and into the nighttime, didn't it?
Let me
But
see if it does it say anywhere in these documents that
that
we
was
found.
last
Hold on.
year's. That was last year's, wasn't
This
it?
is I think it starts. I should know that. I think it starts at like 7 or 8 p.m.
Okay.
Texas time, which Eastern is probably like 6.
Mhm. Yeah, just 1 hour different to Eastern, isn't it?
Doesn't look like it says anywhere in the results when the race actually started. Does it usually time of race? Oh, that's like
8
yeah.
8 p.m. Eastern. I was just on the IndyCar website. 8 p.m.
Oh, okay. Is that for this year or for last year's
No,
race?
that's for this year. Yeah.
This year. So there's a couple things coming for this weekend's race. They've got um, a mandated tire stint length of 35 laps, so that's a 200 lap race. So that's going to make it kind of interesting because like it's almost like the iRacing deal where you had competition yellows and you kind of knew what was going to happen, and you kind of have to plan around like a set stint length. Have you heard about that, Darren?
No, I didn't. When we were there, when I was in the shop on Friday at Foyt's, they were talking about, and I believe this is still the fact that they're going to have to start the race how they qualify, downforce level wise, and they're only allowed to make one rear wing or downforce adjustment only in the first pit stop. So I knew that, but I didn't know. I think that's still the same, but I didn't know the pit stop or
Yeah.
pit light, tire life window.
So basically,
Is that for every stint?
it's for every stint, and they've basically said, because there's been no testing, and we're kind of
Mm,
playing it safe, that the tire, they're only allowed to run tires for a 35 lap run max. So that's
okay.
for a 200 lap race, you're pretty much automatically looking at like a 6 stop right there. So kind of interesting. Yeah, not that much. Sorry, your camera's gone funny again.
Oh, that's all right.
I don't know why I can't.
Yeah, so last year you've got the result, the official lap report up here, and we can talk about that with anybody that's watching. That they can pull up all this data from the IndyCar website, and we can talk about what's available to people to look at. You can see what we've got up here, the official lap reports from the race. So this is how it ended: 1 hour 55 minutes. Newgarden did 4 stops, then the next three only did the 3 stops, and then Hunter Ray was the other one on 4.
Yeah.
Ericsson did 5. And that was probably a splash and go with him being at the back of the lead lap maybe.
Felix is leading the stop race, 6 stops. That's quite a few.
Oh my goodness. Rosen. Yeah, he was at the back a lot of that race. He qualified, I think, 20th or something. I remember at the beginning of the race, Dixon was at the front before he got taken out by, him and Herta kind of came together, right?
Yeah.
And ended Dixon's race. But Rosenquist, he's not a big oval fan. We know from Indy Lights, right? I don't think he likes the ovals very much. And if his car wasn't handling very well, he was back down there. So they were maybe making some changes, just like Tony. He had 6 stops by the looks of it there on the screen as well.
Yeah. So just kind of backtrack. So this is, if anyone's kind of likes numbers and the stats, like like we do, and it's nice to have the data. So this is all of this is available. So we've got kind of the event summary. This goes through the top 10 times for each session, and it's pretty cool to see. Texas is a 1.5 mile bank. I was just talking about the track. It's a 1.5 mile, 2.4 kilometer. High banking, 20 degrees, turn 1, turn 2, to 24, and turn 3, turn 4. D-shaped, kind of that classic NASCAR oval, built in 1996, so a little bit younger than me.
And
It's
you
a
never
fast track. I've never been. I've been here on virtually. We do some
yes.
iRacing stuff, and it's super fun on iRacing. And I bet it's a cool track in real life. I'm sad that I'm not going this weekend, but as you know, TK's got the keys to the 14 car for all the ovals this year, and with me being in the 41 for the 500, so that's the only oval that I'm doing. But the track looks super cool.
Yeah, you'd love it. It's especially when you go there for the first time. It was one of my very first like super banked tracks. I think one of my first ones that I drove was um, Rockingham in the UK, and that's got like probably the same as Indy, about 15 degrees banking. Milwaukee Mile was another one of my very first one. That's virtually flat. And then I go here for a test, I think, and you can hardly walk up the banking. It's so steep. It's definitely different in real life. It's a bit like Richmond in how steep those bankings are. It's a shame we're not going to Richmond this year. I like that as a short track. This one, but the pit straight on this one isn't a natural curve.
No,
like,
it's kind of kinked. It's sort of funky.
Yeah, it's got like two apexes right either side, and it gets people every time. As they get in a runoff of 4, they'll try and dive down on the inside, but the kind of natural tendency is to take an apex.
Yeah.
At both of those.
Then they kind of come wide, and if you have someone on the outside, you get in trouble quick with doing that.
Yep, there's a lot of people going on the grass and people going in the wall on that pit straight. It's not natural for sure.
No, it's a cool track, and so basically, I think the average lap speed, we have qualifying times. Yeah, 2:20. It's pretty fast. So all of these reports, we've got the overall event report. Kind of your final results from the race with penalties and cautions and lap summaries. This is the leader lap sheet. This basically shows the who's in first place, the lap time, speed difference, yellow green flag, and it kind of shows what driver. So this is just a good way to see how the P1 position evolves over the race, but it doesn't really tell you much about what's going on in the back of the field. That's what we got this guy for. This is the lap chart. Where's my little scrolly thing? There it is. So this one's kind of hard to read when you first look at it. It's like, well, there's a lot of numbers, and it's a big table. But basically, each row, so left to right, each row is a driver, and they stay in the same position in this table, no matter where they are. So it's based on the qualifying order. So then there's their car number in each column. So Takuma, the 30 car, led the race up until lap 60, which I believe he pitted and then had an incident in pit lane where he hit his crew member.
Yeah, he came in hot and locked up. Yeah, it was really easy as well. How many laps did you say he'd done there? 60?
About 60. We got
60 on a stint. I mean, and you've been pounding. He's probably been flat that whole time in the lead, just cruising around. If you back it up just a tad more, you get disorientated. You get used to all this grip that you've had. Then you come into pit lane, and the car is set up for the super high banking on these tracks. You've got massive.
Are all skewed and everything.
Big tires on the right, small tires on the left, crossweights. And if you watch closely, he has a massive lockup on his left front tire as he's coming in, which means
right here. Oh God! That hurts to watch.
Yeah, that was.
Luckily, the crew guy was okay. He got up and walked away.
I think it was fortunate it was going in so fast. It kind of glided Stop him a couple of times.
Well, because he got knocked in the air and the car went under him. Because if he had been going slower, he could have hit the wing or something.
Oh
They show a slow mo right here.
Yeah.
It's just like it's worse watching it. See that front left locks up, collects the inside rear. Crewman. Lucky he's with that helmet on. That really helped, right? Oof, that's you never want to see that.
Yeah, that was just.
I wonder if he missed his box or what. What do you think?
Well, he's turning it. So from my point of view, it was more. He just misjudged his braking because he was turning in. He was going around Ryan Hunter-Reay, that normal situation. He turned in correctly, but he just misjudged his speed. 20 mile an hour. They were saying on the TV.
Yeah, that was a bit much. So basically here he drops off, and then I think our next leader is the 15 car. Who's the 15 car? Will Power last year, briefly. Was that Will?
No,
that's not Will.
Ray Hall.
Hall's
15, yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's when Hunter-Reay looked like he was going to be going really well and strong, and he led the race for quite a while for a bit there, didn't he?
Yeah. So basically, how this works is like as the positions change, the car number jumps up and down the rows, and each column's a lap, and then it'll kind of show like if you have a yellow lap on this top kind of header row here. And then what else we got? These are the lead or the top section times, which for an oval, there's not a whole lot of sectors to look at. Basically, that kind of breaks the track down into splits, and you can actually find all of this on the IndyCar website. So if you go to IndyCar.com, schedule. So we want a race that's already happened. So we'll look at 2019. If we're talking about Texas, it was the DXC Technology 600. Click on results. And in the session report, this is where you can get all this. So this is all stuff that, if you have interest in the stats or any of that you want to look at, it's all right here. And, you can basically download all these as just a PDF file, which is great that IndyCar lets the fans kind of access that. It's kind of fun if you're into stats. But yeah, so kind of going back to basically with a 250 lap race last year came down to a 3 or a 4 stop strategy.
Yeah.
And the question of do you do like 4 or 5 50 lap runs on tires or 4 like 63 lap runs, and the winning strategy ended up being the 4 stop. But it was kind of interesting because Newgarden pitted under yellow, which we can see here. He is 2 car, and he pits. Where's the yellow? Right here. So he pits. No, it was around lap 130.
Before that.
Yeah, he
right there. The blue is his pit stop right under that yellow.
Lap 137, but he also pitted before that. Right here on lap 121, he pits from P7. And he's only done 16 laps on that set of tires.
Pits again. Yeah.
His crew chief made the call to come in early, probably fuel the tires, which would let them...
fuel, 16 laps of fuel wouldn't have been as fast. The fuel would have been faster than the tires, wouldn't it?
Oh, at that point, yeah. So it wouldn't. They'd probably just top them up and change tires. But after he did that stop under yellow, which he was, he only lost 1 spot.
He only lost 1 spot. Yeah. That was exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
That's the thing. Is like when you're in a long, multiple hundreds of lap race on a relatively short oval with a short lap time, 20, 30 seconds. Not a lot of cars are going to be on the lead lap come the midway point or 3/4 of the way through the race. So something that you have to always think about is where are you relative to the last car on your lap? If hopefully you're on the lead lap. And in this case, he pits from P7, and there's only a few cars on the lead lap at that time. So he doesn't really stand to lose a lot if like a yellow comes out or anything.
I think that shows actually, Dalton, there on lap 137, he didn't even lose a spot, did he?
Well, because he comes in 7th and comes out 9th, so he lost 2 spots.
Oh yes, he lost 2 spots. Yeah. But still on the lead lap with fresh tires. Yeah, and he
his lap pace after that pit, while everyone else is on relatively worn tires, was like 7 miles an hour average quicker than
So
the
go through
leaders.
this. He overtakes somebody number 19 straight away there,
Right away.
and then where did he go there?
Stays in 8th for a while, but then just starts picking guys off as their tires start to wear. He's in P3
by lap
lap 188, and then he's leading by lap 200. Then pits from the lead, only loses 1 spot, and
goes the rest.
Because now he's also kind of off cycle, right? Because there's only 3 cars on that lead lap, so he doesn't really lose. Like they've all pitted behind him, so he's able to pit and not lose that lead.
Yeah,
and basically just
everybody's pitted on the green. Yeah, he's just done. Yeah,
and it was kind of cool to watch how he managed Rossi at the end of the race. The last 7 laps or so, Alex was trying to make that outside pass work. Which is actually, this is something that you can do in iRacing if you're on the Texas track. When I was racing there, this worked really well. Was you'd basically come off a 4, just throwing a little block in there, come off a 4, take the inside line, and basically force them to take the outside.
Yeah, you see here, that's what there's the first apex he's taken. Now he stays down. Rossi has no chance to dive bomb underneath him, does he?
No. Now, Colton was the only one that was really kind of making the outside pass into one work. I think he was pretty strong in traffic, but he also collected himself and Scott later in the race. So
yeah, and you did see him getting loose quite a few times on the high line there, and 19-year-old just hanging it out there, nothing to lose, right? No. We know he's pretty damn brave at 19 years old, and Hinch tried it a couple of times, but Hinch and Veach both tapped the wall, didn't they?
Yeah.
By loose coming off of 2. 2 gets very flat. I going through the banking, so you're on the high side, and as it gets flat, you just lose the front end with as the track drops away out.
Suddenly drops.
Oh yeah, you're already like you got very little grip up there on the high line, and you're a little dirty air. If you get a massive push, your hands just tend to just put more lock on, and then when the back drops down as well, that's when it snaps on you, and they would tag it.
Push loose.
Yep, push loose.
Well, I mean that Colton had a big moment. Zach crashed, Hinchcliffe crashed coming out of 2, and it was at PitFit this morning because now we're able to go back in the gyms and everything. They've started to kind of open things up a little bit, so we're back training. And I was talking to James, and he was saying that I just asking him what the track was like, and what he was thinking for next weekend. And he said, like this track, like I said, that drop off, it's so banked in 1-2, and then it really abruptly gets flat again. But they've kind of graded it recently, so I think it's a bit better.
Right.
At least there's not as much of a transition, so it'll be interesting to see this weekend how that plays out.
Like you were saying, you get so little chance to go down on the inside in 1-2. Your move is, if you've got a big run, it's to the outside, and if you can hang it there and stay there and get a run off of 2, then you've got a chance of overtaking it down the outside into turn 3. So that'll be interesting.
It's better racing.
Yeah,
could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to. I think one of the big points about this coming weekend is like how quickly are guys going to adapt to the schedule. I mean, they have an hour and a half. We talked about earlier. It's kind of park for May, right after qualifying. There's no changes. So that's kind of interesting. It's like how do you? I doubt anyone's going to be going out there with a risky qualifying setup because they have to race that car. Right.
No, that was the discussion on Friday at the shop. The engineers were in there, and Scott Hahn, the team manager, and even I had a little bit of an input with them. They're like, what do we do? Do we start with a qualifying setup and risk changing it in one of the pit stops, having a slow pit stop, or do we start the race? Do we qualify in race trim? And the not trying to give too much away. I think the general consensus was, it's too risky to try qualify and change him in that first pit stop, which is the only allowed deal. Now, saying that, you saw there 61 laps, was it, on a stint?
Yep.
So the fuel tanks haven't changed, and you're saying it's going to be 35 laps on a stint.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be different for
So that's
sure.
so I guess do you? That's another question. Do you fuel do you fuel to 35 laps, or do you put a full tank in and only take tires on every other stop so you can have a quicker pit stop?
That's true. So what you're saying is true, right? You can go 60 something laps on a tank of fuel,
Yeah.
right? But you've got to take tires.
And
I
you've got to
think the
save a
biggest
bit, I would think. That
you've
that would
probably
have to
got to
be a
say
fuel
you got to
save.
go 70 probably, but you've got in and out laps to that will save a little bit as well. But you're absolutely right. But the big thing that from when I always drove was even when you're taking tires, you might as well take, especially the big, unless you're just taking tires to get to the end,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got
Might
fuel
as
to
well
get to the
fuel it up.
end, and it's a yellow, and you can make it to the end, and there's a yellow, and there's only like 3 or 4 of you on the lead lap. You're all going to pit to get tires. Then you might not take fuel. But I think the biggest thing for this race, there wasn't very many yellows early on in the race.
No.
And that's what spread everybody out. They got everybody got lapped pretty quickly, like you were saying. It's only a 20-second lap. The guys at the back, are already 10 seconds behind on lap one, right? Because they're so strung out.
Yeah.
So
We've got a couple questions we can take here. And if anyone's wondering, my other monitor with like streaming software is over there, so that's why I'm always looking over here, because the streaming thing is over here. I should move
yeah.
that around. So there was 26, I think, or 25, but now I think the Carlin 31 car is not showing up for this race. So
Yeah,
there's
I
kind of
just had a
24.
quick run through without adding, on the IndyCar website. I got around 24 cars, and that's more than last year. You can see
Still
here.
pretty healthy, all things
Yeah, there
considered.
was a few more than last year. There was only 22 cars last year. So some of the you're sharing a car. Spencer Pigot's only doing a few races. The Carlin cars, like you said, Chilton's not doing the ovals. Connor
I
might.
guess the 31 would have been Nazar, right?
Nazar, yeah.
Yeah.
Is he not? Yeah, so he's probably.
So he's not. I think they probably don't want to risk going to an oval before
Yeah,
back-to-back string of races.
yeah, it's gonna be tough on the schedule for the mechanics for sure. And Nazar's never. I don't think he's ever done an oval race, has he? Just like we were talking, Palou and some of the other rookies, it's going to be very difficult. I'm kind of glad. I think you've got a lot more experience on oval than most of these rookies that are going, so I wouldn't be too worried. Going to Texas for a short practice, qualify straight to race. Some of these other guys that it's going to be their first experience is going to be tough.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. I think especially for Palou, he's never raced on an oval except for his few races of experience in the iRacing series, which I think, as we saw, gave people like a lot of false confidence.
Yes.
I think and not one to call people out, but I saw Lando tweeted that when there was that whole thing with him and Simon, that if it had been the real race, that he still would have made it three wide into turn two. And I think Tony tweeted him back. It's like, oh, we'll see how that turns out. It's like, yeah. You can say that over Twitter, but real life, it's hard to say until you've actually raced on an oval, right?
Yeah. There's very little chance to go too wide in the short shoot, let alone
making it three wide
in
turn two.
Yeah. If something's gone wrong already, and it's going to not end well already. So.
Last one in, first one out, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Yeah. Will these stats help? I think will the stats help for this race? Just taking questions. I think it's good for us to look at this and look at past races. At the end of the season, it's always good to look back at your races and kind of and during the year, but kind of download everything at the end of the year and just say okay, what was good, what was bad, and I think what's always useful is to look at a couple of strategies and see how it played out. So the 3-stop didn't win this race, but the 4-stop ended up being what came out on top, and what ends up being the winning strategy, and what circumstances led that to being the right call, which it's always a game time decision, and it wasn't even the 4-stop strategy that won the race for Newgarden. It was the short stop to take
Yes.
advantage of a yellow, and
As he was at the back of the pack already, or back of the lead, like it was situational. And I was going to just add to that decision-making comment that you made there, Dalton. It's very much in the pre-race event reports that teams do and engineers do. And the pre-race meeting with engineers and drivers and coaches and spotters and everybody. They'll all the stats from the last several races at this race. We've got how many yellows, how often, what's the likelihood of average yellow laps per race over the last 10 years, and things like that. So not just last year's, but several years leading up to this weekend. There's always a number cruncher somewhere in the team that they get called upon. But it's just got to prepare yourself to make the right decision when the time comes. So Cindric, Newgarden's guys, he's in that position. He's at the back, he's 2 cars behind him. He's going to lose 2 spots on the lead lap. And those guys a lap down are going to probably pit anyway. So you under that first lap of yellow, I guarantee the Penske brain, syndrome was grinding really hard on past results like from this.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's almost like when you first start driving race cars, you've only driven one track, so you have nothing to compare it to. But after years, you've developed like a Rolodex of tracks that you've been to, and you come to a new track, and you can be like, oh, turn 1 here is like turn 5 here, and turn 2 here is like turn 4 there, and you can kind of that experience of different situations helps. It's like anything else. Is it harder to race at night? Yeah, you can get glare if it's kind of transitioning from night to day, or day to night. And previously we've had the helmet. This is helmet here. This is the new helmet for this year, so there's actually no tear-offs or anything on it yet. Still got to put the radio kit in. But these are the tear-off posts. So normally we'd have tear-offs on the visor, but now we've got the aero screen with a tear-off on it. So, maybe we'll put 1 tear-off on just to protect the visor from scratches and stuff. But, you won't have dirt accumulated on your helmet as much, but it'll be on the aero screen. So you'll only be able to tear that off every pit stop, which I guess with the tire life limits, they're going to get lots of pit stops. But as you add tear-offs to these screens, like we haven't experienced it in IndyCar yet, and from what we've seen in testing, the tear-offs are really well done. They've, the visual distortion as you look through the canopy is not very much. There's not a lot of distortion. But as you keep adding tear-offs, that kind of makes that effect more pronounced.
And some glare you found?
Glare. The glare was the big thing, really.
And at Texas, at Coda, Texas, when you tested at the beginning of the year, we went till it was raining and it was cold, and so they extended it till dusk, didn't they? As long as they possibly could, to give the guys as much track time as possible. And the sun was coming down pretty low in front of you coming into the last turn, wasn't it? It was getting a little bit of glare. And that will be a problem here on the oval, because it'll probably be a day 2 night race. Just like
they have all the lights shining in. That could be interesting.
Yeah, the lights are generally, so I didn't have the aero screen obviously, but the lights are generally not a problem. It's generally the sun going down behind the grandstand. Yeah, that's it's different. The lights
are almost like at a normal angle to the car most of the time, right? Whereas that's what gets you is like low angle of incidence, and you get that like the light diffracts out, and it's just like whoa. Yeah.
So if that's normally what I've experienced on my visor, and you have to choose your visor accordingly. You saw Newgarden, he had like a semi-smoked visor. The aero screens are all clear, right? They do have a heating element in them, which gives them a little bit of
heating element, wavy things.
Yeah, kind of hopefully defogs if you need it, if it rains. But they're generally clear, so your visor, you've got to try and choose what tint you have, don't you? And you've got some different ones, haven't you? Like yellows and iridium, or what, I can't remember what they're called. Funky colors, right?
Yeah, well, and actually the yellow visors are kind of a hot commodity. You can't really come by them anymore because I think they're not they're not they're not FIA approved as of
Okay.
the latest set of standards, because I think there was an incident in Europe and someone claimed that they couldn't see the yellow because they had a yellow visor on,
Good excuse.
which I would
I
say
love
is total bollocks, but like
it.
whatever.
That's like something I'd say. For sure. Oh, my kid, my 13-year-old would bloody say that was for sure.
Yeah, but I
Sure.
guess now no one can have yellow visors, so.
No, that's a shame.
So from Atlantic Cat, any chance you might show up at Texas just in case someone needs a sub? Well, the overriding factor with the the Texas travel decisions are that we're at IndyCar and the teams are trying to be safe with COVID-19 and social distancing, so they're the personnel on site is limited to basically people that have an active job, either running the car or drivers. So there won't be really anybody who's not either a driver or a crew person there. So no, I won't be at Texas. And given that it's a one-day event with an hour and a half practice, the if someone for some reason gets sick after practice, like no one in their right mind is going to put me in for qualifying. And then, like having never driven the track, having we haven't even tested the IndyCar on an oval yet. It wouldn't make sense to put any driver in, right into qualifying and then for the race. So I'll be back at Indy watching the race from on TV, cheering on the white guys.
Absolutely, Charlie and TK. I think they've got better chance than they did last year. We don't want to we haven't dwelled on how the Foyt boys did last year at Texas. They've had up and down success. Last year wasn't one of their stronger races, qualifying at the back. But I think with the way that the teams gelled this year, the new personnel on the engineering department. I think they're gonna be pretty damn strong. And Tony's always pretty damn strong on the ovals.
Yeah. And then they also, I think Tony finished third at Gateway, so I think hopefully it looks like by the end of the year last year they were kind of getting the oval stuff figured out. And,
yes, exactly.
Oh, another question: do rookies have a chance to practice? I actually think it's actually a 2-hour practice with the first 30 minutes set aside for the rookies and for people that have never driven at Texas before.
Yeah,
which is a couple of the veteran rookies, the guys that like just do the 500, or I don't know if Connor, I think, is one of the guys that's never driven there before.
Pato, maybe did Pato do it last year? Maybe.
So there'll be like 5 people doing like a 30-minute practice just to kind of get up to speed before everyone else goes out for the hour and a half. So I guess they get a bit of practice. And some of these guys did like a rookie orientation test.
They did, yes.
Otto I know and Renus and those guys.
Schmidt guys did definitely.
Yeah.
So
they're not going. And actually, I think Palu did that test as well. So they're not.
He did his orientation because he's doing the full season.
Yeah. So they're not going into it totally blind. So they did get a chance to test there before. And then on our end, so you mentioned you were at the shop last Friday, and actually I wasn't there. I was down in Charlotte because we had a day at the Chevy simulator, which is basically it's a lot fancier than my iRacing setup over here. It's it's a much more advanced piece of kit. Not VR, so it doesn't have that going for it. But
well, your VR never bloody works.
My VR always breaks, so that's probably why they didn't do it. Can't have the thing coming disconnected every time you get out.
They have all the tracks, right? They have the new car model. Obviously, they have all the Chevy engine data, which is not pertinent to iRacing or anybody's My Simulator or anybody else has got that type of stuff. So it's definitely got some advantages, right? And
it's more current with what we're actually driving, and it's hugely beneficial for rookies, especially like guys like me that haven't tested on some of these tracks in an IndyCar. We did some road course and oval work, and it's like it gives you a great ability to drive and just get your kind of sight picture and your references for tracks that you haven't been to yet. So I think it's been great. And this year, so limited on testing time. I've only been in the car for a day and 20 minutes at COTA or an hour at COTA. It's like we can't test, and now that we're able to safely kind of get back to some type of work where we're able to go down to the sim and do days there, and it's very useful. I mean, back when you were racing, did they have sims that were like
No,
that, or was it not really a
no,
thing yet?
nothing at all. The Dallara sim and factory in Indy wasn't even built. As I was finishing my stuff over in Formula One in the early 2000s. McLaren and Williams. McLaren were the first ones to develop it in the world, and I drove that a couple of times when I was nearly driving for them in Formula 3000 back in 2000, 2001. So that was when they were just starting to, but it was the big Formula One teams. It wasn't out in general consumption like people like drivers like you've got all your stuff in your room there. That's probably better than what they had back then. So, but no, it was cool, right? I was in the factory. You were down with a couple of engineers, limited crew at the simulator, but we were all remotely in at the shop here at Speedway. The other engineers, team boss, myself, mechanics, everybody was kind of there, kind of checking in.
Had the voice, so we were able to talk in real time and all that. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, while you were driving, I could talk to you while you were driving and everything, couldn't I?
Work from home. It was like a racing Zoom meeting.
Yeah, I was in my PJ bottoms and everything.
Well, and you didn't have to get up at 4 a.m. to catch a flight either.
Oh, I didn't. No, but the flight was all okay and everything, though, right? The airport was good.
Yeah, it was. You know, I was kind of concerned because it was my first time on a plane since St. Pete, and you know, with everything that's really been going on, and you know, it was just it was weird being back at the airport, and you know, I guess there were a bunch of Southwest planes just parked on the taxiway. You know, they've kind of mothballed a good portion of their fleet, like most airlines have. That you know, their volume has gone down so significantly, but just you know, our flight was actually pretty full. It's, you know, they've kind of funneled everyone onto like just a few flights, and then Charlotte Airport was relatively busy, but you know, not like a normal day. Like it was definitely different. But yeah, we all had to wear masks, and they don't have like they don't come by and give you water and coffee and all that. But aside from that, it was business as usual.
Yeah, long day for you though.
Yeah, it was long. It was get up at 4, and I got back home at like 11:30 or so. And you know, because they said for the security or the clearing like the TSA stuff and all that to get there like 2 hours early because of all the the COVID measures and whatnot. But there really weren't enough people there that it never really got busy. So I probably didn't need to get up so early. But I figured better be safe. Better be safe and sorry when you're flying in the morning of a test, right?
Yeah, you needed to get to that for the test, and you didn't want to be missing your flight because you were stuck in a security line. But there's obviously no casual flyers now, are there? Anything? So that was good. Maybe helped everybody out for Texas this weekend. So it might have helped them a bit.
Yeah, it was fun to get that, and that was my first time at Chevy Sim, and I really enjoyed it. So hopefully we can do more of that this year. That was great. And, we're looking forward to seeing how this race turns out this weekend. I think there's definitely some. Everyone's kind of everyone's excited to go back racing, but at the same time, there's a lot of unknown because usually you have the month of May to get everyone sorted on ovals and 3 or 4 races under your belt for the whole the whole pack, right? To kind of get
who's fast, who's not, who's always at the front, who's at the back, who's always in the way or blocking. They don't know anybody. So to do this for Texas, where it's always a tough race anyway, the best of times is it's going to be an exciting one. So any predictions, Dalton? Signing off.
I would put my. We're obviously cheering for the Foyt guys. I think Tony has immense experience on ovals and does really well. So I'd be looking for Tony to bring us home a good result. But it's going to be who kind of is able to hit the ground running, which is going to lend an advantage to the bigger teams. So, and the Penske guys won last year, so they'll definitely be tough to beat. But you've got your Carpenter guys that are notoriously fast on ovals. I don't know. It's not really a prediction, but that's kind of where that's who I'm watching right now.
And same for me. I'd like to see the Foyt guys get up there and race with them. I think they could have a good race car. the fine little tweaks that the money buys you to buy an extra mile an hour or two in qualifying that Penske and Genesys have. I don't think the other smaller teams have. So maybe in qualifying you'll see the usual suspects up at the front. But last year Takuma and Rahal were up front. For in the Rahal cars, you had Hinchcliffe up there in a Schmidt car. So I think always these especially when it's a situation like this, you'll get the usual suspects, but you'll get there's always a surprise guy that, like you say, Don, they'll hit the ground running. Their setup works, it's beautiful, and they're fast that weekend.
And with an hour and a half of practice, the machine of the big teams maybe doesn't have the time to work that it needs, right? It's going to be who makes the call right the first few times, and just who can figure it out on the fly. So that's why you got to have the best people around you. Yeah. But yeah. So anyway, that's kind of our.
We'll review it next week.
And then the other thing we'll want to talk about next week is what's the how did the aeroscreen perform? How did everyone handle the heat, the vision, the glare? How did all that work out? So
the tire thing is a big one, right? What strategy played out? That's what's going to be interesting for me, is how, like you said, Dalton, are they going to take fuel always? Are they going to take fuel early on in the race? Are they not going to fuel at the end of the race? It's going to be an interesting one if you can keep following along.
Yeah, so it'll be exciting. Make sure to tune in on the NBC network broadcast for this one. So it'll be prime time. So catch that on Saturday. Yeah,
Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Yeah.
8 p.m. Eastern. All right. Well, we will see you all next week. This time again, 8 p.m. And thanks for watching.
Yeah, we'll hopefully have a bit more to talk about next week. But we're getting back racing. Thank you very much.
Yep.